Hi, everyone. It's Renee Cormier from the Fractional Referral Network. Today, we're talking to Monica Swanson. Monica is a digital transformation consultant, and she's the founder of Monroe Business Solutions. She helps businesses turn IT into a driver of growth through practical people-first strategy. So, welcome aboard, Monica. Thank you for doing this with me. Um,
Hello. Yeah. I'm glad we get to record this. Thanks.
is there anything you want to add before I start asking you questions?
Well, I can just give a super quick intro to my business. So, as you mentioned, Monroe Business Solutions, and I'm targeting, and I realize mid-size is always a bit of a like, what do you mean? But really, companies that are about 20 employees to 2,000 employees, because this is where they start to get some of the complexity in their technology systems. And of course, they're focused more on their business, right? Of golf products or food or whatever is their product and service. And their technology is doesn't typically have a clear ownership in that size company. So I can come in and help them save time and money. And that's really, aligned with their business growth, right? So if saving time and money can help the business grow better.
Very good. Thank you so much. So many people hear the term digital transformation, which, I've heard you refer to as IT modernization. Uh, but for some people, that can still feel a little bit vague. How do you define it in a way that makes sense for fractional leaders?
Yeah, I realize that term is a little it's out in the industry, right? So I want to address digital transformation and that is what I do, but I realize my ideal client is not saying, I wish I could digitally transform, but what they really want to do is digital transformation. So they might be thinking modernize their IT, and that's why I've used that phrase. It's more the intentional use of technology. So they are quite often dealing with ineffective processes, manual processes where they just haven't addressed technology. And so that's what I mean by modernizing to IT or getting some digital transformation is being intentional of where in my business should I start putting technology or digitizing it. Um, Let me say that again. Where in
Go
my
ahead.
business, yeah,
It's a mouthful.
yeah, it is. So it's about being intentional about where in my business should I start adding technology or digitize, right? So it could be HR, finance, your product side, your, behind the scenes with your security and all that, how do you automate all of that again to save time and money? Yes, you will probably be spending some money on technology, but you will be saving time and money with probably already have some software technology you're not fully utilizing, um, get rid of some employee engagement frustration, right? When people are wasting their time with ineffective processes or just swirling instead of doing something more strategic for the business.
I agree with that. That sounds like things that are absolutely necessary. So some might think digital transformation is only relevant for IT leaders. But what about, other fractional leaders in marketing, sales, or finance? Why should they care about digital transformation?
Well, any fractional leader is coming in to help the business. And if they're only helping them with, I don't know, more tactical side, I think they're missing part of the opportunity to add technology to digitize the solutions they're doing. And I feel like they also really need to model that, right? So if you can't just, propose it and hope that the company does it, but if you're modernizing, or excuse me, if you're showing how that can be done, if you're modeling that for a business, even with your solutions, then it starts to become apparent of where, like, for example, marketing, right? You've got, AI, you need analytics from a finance side. Or where do you have potential fraud thing, issues going on? Are you implementing an ERP with HR? Is it pretty manual payroll? Are you onboarding employees in a more digital way? And it doesn't have to be like from 0 to 100 with digitalization. It's about right sizing the solution. So as the company grows, they have those effective technology solutions in place.
So what are some of the biggest mistakes that companies make when they're approaching digital transformation?
I think of thinking that a digital transformation is technology, period. That it's like
Yes.
we will implement this solution and then we've digitized. that's where companies run into the technology frustrations. I mean, I can't think of a company that didn't have some sort of frustration with their systems. And as you start peeling back the questions there, like what's really going on? Sometimes it's the technology. Quite often, it's the people on the process side. And I say this repeatedly: it has to be technology, people, and process in order to have an effective solution. And if I talk about the people side, change management, the training, the adoption, that's the people side of a technology. If I talk about the process side, do you have the right processes? Like, say, for example, Renee, you and I are both working with a customer relationship management or a CRM. Do we have the processes so we're both using it the same way and we are both trained and understand the purpose behind that? Because if not, if you're doing one, two, three, and I'm doing ABC, then we have a mix mash of data, then the reports aren't going to be effective. That's part of it. And it's also, if again, we're both using that CRM, but it's quite a pain. Like, okay, first I need to do this, and then I back out, and then I go over there, and then I have to manually enter this. And that's also the process side of, can you put the right processes so the technology works, that I can automatically click on this, and when I enter, I'm brought to the next screen, or et cetera. So it's that whole people, process, technology. That's when you have an effective solution, that's going to work for the business.
Yeah, I find a lot of companies don't have systems that talk to each other, right? So everybody's, every department is using something a little bit different, or they're half using what they've already got. And so there's nothing that's really that effective. So they're still doing maybe some backward things that their current um, uh, they're capable of doing more and being more efficient, but they haven't really onboarded people into into using the technology, so that half the people that work in the company still don't know how to use things, or
Yeah.
they're using a different thing. Like, for example, I worked with a company that was using two different sales CRMs. So
Yeah.
some sales reps were using one and others were using another, and then how do you track all the data? It's a nightmare, right?
Absolutely. And then to expand on that as well, like when I was talking about people, processing, technology, it could just be with the CRM. But then you have to take the broader step. You have the CRM, you have the finance data, you have the HR data. How do you then take a people, process, and technology across all of that? So pretty soon you're looking at the entire landscape or tech stack in order to create the right people, processes, and data. So to your example, do you have like your HR employee data automatically flowing into something? Do you have your pricing coming, to and from your ERP to your finance? So that way it all is working together. If you change a price here, it automatically flows down into the subsequent systems. That's the people, process, technology.
Yes.
So I know, oh, this is where I change it, and then the data goes. I know how to train people on, what's going on. And it's not just technology, it's also the integrations, all of that together.
Yeah, okay, good. So what role should fractional leaders play in guiding clients through a digital transformation? Because they're only in and out, they're not there for any length of time. What
Yeah. Yeah. Helping them see the big picture. Again, are you just and I think it's also, as a fractional leader, right? You hopefully are not just focused on, this is what they asked you to do. If, a true leader, right, is thinking broader, bigger picture. That's the benefit of having a fractional person versus just a consultant. So hopefully they're thinking broader picture of, your team is struggling with this, and it seems like this data is not being kept up to date. Have you considered, a connection or an integration? Have you thought about, talking from again, in the finance system, have you talked to HR or these other people on how this may work together? And just bringing up those ideas of how to collaborate and partner across the business, so it's not separate systems, it's not separate processes. That's I think a key thing that fractional leaders should be doing, because they should understand the importance of, the cohesion and partnership and collaboration.
So, um, fractional IT leadership is certainly a growing trend. So what does a model look like in practice? And how does it benefit companies that maybe they're not ready for a full-time CIO or CTO?
Yeah, I think that quite often the fractional marketing, fractional finance, those seem to be the first areas that come in from a fractional point of view. But hopefully, those leaders are again modeling of what a successful organization should be, a successful system should be, um, and how clients can think of technology as a business enabler. Like you should never do technology for the sake of technology, right? It's always about the business and how do you address a business issues, which is quite often, technology is the answer. Um, so I think ensuring that as the business is growing and they need more IT assistance, planting those ideas of maybe we should bring in an IT leader that could assist with some of those. I have been doing a lot of conversations with other fractional individuals because I think that is a very strong partnership for me as an IT leader.
Yeah.
That quite often, if there's a fractional finance or fractional sales or someone like that in the business, that they are going to have exposures to those IT issues and they could refer me in. um, but I think it's also people think, oh, IT is expensive. Well, it's expensive to not do it. I mean, the reality is you're wasting time and money, frustrating people with ineffective work. So it's really being smarter on how that money and that time is spent. Because instead of people scurrying around doing ineffective work, not having appropriate security, not having the appropriate reports and data. I mean, that's all critical information, critical enablers for a business to grow. And that's what a fractional IT person could come in, look at the entire tech stack and help with that digital transformation across the organization.
So what does your process look like, Monica? So as we're talking about, what the model looks like, how do you approach? You go into a company. What would be your process for assessing what needs to be done? Do you have anything specific that you like to do?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things like to plant the idea. Like if there's a fractional individual that like they're seeing the IT side, but the business isn't quite understanding that. I did create a health check, and it's a super simple tool that answers 6 questions, and depending on how you answer them, gives some immediate feedback, so the business can start thinking through what could a successful digital footprint look like for my organization. So that's kind of planting the idea. After that, I offer an assessment. So it's again looking across the organization. And in order to do that, I want to again have those conversations with the key function areas. So the head of HR, the head of finance, the head of sales, and that could be the same person doing those capabilities, but I want to make sure all of those business functions are considered in more of a technical assessment, and then I could produce a roadmap. So it might be you really need to first fix your security because that's a big issue. I'm just making this up. But then after that, we need to upgrade your ERP. If you know you're frustrated, I think we can get better use of it if we do A and B. And then you need to automate HR by, due to your growth plan of such and such. So an example of what an assessment with a tech roadmap could be. Then it's up to the company of do they want some assistance with executing on that roadmap or not? So those are two ways that I'm trying to present myself to help organizations. And I also find that quite often companies are more open to a project idea than a fractional. And that's their thinking, right? So they're thinking, I have a problem with X, or I don't know, how to manage again a CRM implementation, or these two systems not, talking. So it's usually like one or two pieces of their puzzle that they need some help with. But as the conversation goes, then pretty soon those other puzzle pieces are exposed and they're dealing with random puzzle pieces and I don't know what to do with that. I can come and then help more from that fractional point of view and say, this is how the puzzle pieces should work. This is what your digital footprint should look like. Here's a clear picture of it. and then help execute on that. So there's a lot of different ways depending on the company's culture, their mindset to improving their technology. But hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you. So tell me, what's one actionable takeaway that every fractional leader listening to this recording could apply today? So you're working with a company. What could they do to support a digital transformation or to make a really great referral to you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks, Renee. I think that, I mean, first understanding that no matter what capability or functional area you come from, technology should absolutely be a part of it, right? And you don't have to solve that on your own. You should not be solving that on your own. So, understanding that I think is the first thing. I do think that, they can start pitching the idea in the company, but I think it's probably difficult for, I'll just go with fractional, like with CFO. How are they going to clearly articulate IT? So ask me, let me help articulate that IT, need and how that can be solved. I do think, again, it's not the, solve all, but that IT health check, I think is asking some intriguing questions. And it's completely on their own, right? So they can answer as pessimistic or optimistic as they want to get some of that feedback. And then hopefully they're planning the idea of, that's interesting. Maybe I should have some conversations about IT. And yes, I would love to be the person they have that conversation with. But that IT health check is available on my website. Download it for free. Like I said, it's Excel. That's probably the only gotcha because the way I built it with a lot of real-time feedback. And I think it has given some kind of good nuggets for people to think about from a tech perspective.
So tell me, what would be some of the like red flags in a company? So you're a fractional, let's say a CFO or a CHRO. What would be some of the red flags or indicators that maybe they could be doing things better from a digital transformation or digital integration perspective?
Well, first and foremost, are there any security concerns?
Yeah.
Um, that that's a huge red flag. Uh, do you have data for data-driven decisions? And the example that you had talked earlier, Renee, there's two
Mm,
CRMs, for example. You're
yeah.
probably struggling with data, and that, could be the connections, but lacking data, from manual processes as well. So lacking data from data-driven decisions. Are they, are their systems going to support their growth? So quite often they're still, their technology systems are, a year or two behind just because they haven't had that time to give it. And if they have a growth projection, whether it's product, number of employees, whatever they're trying to deal, and their technology systems are going to hold them back, that's definitely a red flag. You don't want to not grow because of an internal problem. I'd say those are three big flags right there.
So I think like sometimes one of the biggest reasons companies are apprehensive about updating their tech stack is the disruption, and that people don't necessarily want to. Everyone's go go go, and they don't want to take the time to train staff. They don't want to take the time to, um, you know, cross over. It creates a lot of disruption, and then the learning curve and blah blah blah. And so they delay until it gets really ugly. Is there other things that you do as a digital transformation specialist to alleviate that sense of overwhelm or confusion around changes in technology?
Yeah, the confusion I think is one key right there, Renee. And I've worked very hard throughout my career to take the mystique out of IT. I started my career as an IT developer doing a lot of architecture work, so was definitely kind of more behind the scenes. And the first time I took a role in the business was when I saw, everyone was pretty scared of IT. And
Yeah.
and I thought that we need to break that down. So I've always tried to say yes, and that doesn't mean that's the right answer, but like for example, can we build that report? Well, yes, we could, understand that would be, a custom solution. We'd need to pull in the vendor. Oh, no, no, never mind. Then that's not worth it. Okay, great. Now they understood it. It took the scary out of it versus, well, no, we can't build that report. I'm like, okay, that's scary answer. So I'm always going to be partnering and talking about the business side of technology and not talking about, the techie stuff behind, because that should be behind the scenes, right? That's
Tech
the
speak.
confusing part. Yeah, the tech speak. So I'm trying to take the mystique out, like I said, and really address the business side. um I've also used an analogy that hopefully helps people understand like the work I do. Like sometimes people will say, oh, so can you help us configure our email? And that's not really what I'm trying to do. I'm working more at the bigger picture, at the strategic level. And this is where the analogy can come in. So let's say you're going to have a party, and your party is, maybe a dinner party. You're going to invite some people. So you're thinking, I can plan the food, I can take care of music, all's good, host a dinner party. Then as you're growing and now you need to have a more complex party and it's going to be a bigger deal. And so you think you're going to handle it all. I love to make appetizers. I'll do that. I'll just run out to Total Wine, get what I need. And then people are saying, oh, do you have a theme for the party? Oh my gosh, I didn't think about a theme. Did you also invite these people? Oh my gosh, and I don't have their contact information. And pretty soon this, yay, I'm having a party turns to, I'm having a party. This is not working. That's the same concept as a small business dealing with their IT, and then it's growing and it gets more complex, and you can no longer do it all. So, what you need is a party, right? You have an IT party planner that can then talk to you about maybe you shouldn't host this in your house. Maybe we need to find a venue and you should hire a bartender and you should cater this food, but you can still make the desserts because you want to showcase your cooking or whatever, whatever. So, right, you get to the right solution. I'm going to be that IT party planner for your business. I'm going to help you understand the big picture of all your technology, understand what your vision is, where you're going as you grow, and come up with that plan, or what I'm going to refer to as your IT roadmap on how to get you there so you don't have those security issues anymore. So you're not wasting your time on manual, ineffective processes. So you're just saving that time and money with your technology solutions.
Okay, very good. Is there anything you'd like to add today? Because I've run out of questions. But this has been really informative, and I have to thank you for that. Anything you would like people to know?
Uh, I think we've covered it all. Yeah, I feel like yeah, a good partnership is obviously a key to it. And I think, again, as long as people are understanding, it's about saving time and money, right? I'm not going to come in and, I'm not asking people to spend a lot of money on solutions. I'm going to help them save time and money because I'm
Yeah,
guessing you have multiple systems, ineffective, contract vendor management, security concerns. You just have a lot of random puzzle pieces that I'll help align and save you some
yeah,
time and money.
yeah. Getting a return on your investment is always important, right?
Absolutely.
And your IT stack is an investment. It should never be something that feels like it's depleting you, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Monica. It's been a real treat chatting with you. I'm going to end this recording. Hold on one second here.